Hi, welcome to the second episode of the Untangling Aging series. Today I'll be talking to Brian Kennedy, the director for the Center of Healthy Longevity at the National University of Singapore and the former president and CEO of the Buck Institute for Research on Aging. Hi,
Okay.
Professor Kennedy. Thank you so much for joining me today. Just jumping right into things, would you like to introduce yourself, kind of telling us a little about your experiences, what you're up to?
Thanks for inviting me. I'm Brian Kennedy. I'm director of the Center for Healthy Longevity at National University of Singapore, and also the director of the Asian Center for Reproductive Longevity and Equality, where we look at ovarian aging. My research over the years has really been trying to understand why we age and at the mechanistic level, and to develop interventions to slow or reverse aging.
Yeah, so you have a very international perspective on aging, actually, from your journey from like North America all the way to Asia. So, what excited you about your move from the Buck Institute to Singapore? What opportunities did you see there?
Well, I think, Singapore is kind of, ground zero for longevity. I don't know if you know, but there's a Netflix special on blue zones right now, and they just identified Singapore as the sixth blue zone, meaning that there's a very high frequency of people that live to very old ages. The problem here is that it's a small island and the birth rate is exceptionally low. So what that means is there's a very large proportion of people that are getting old. Up 25 to 30% of the population will be over 65 in the next 5 years. And that creates an issue if those people aren't healthy. So Singapore's realized that they need to focus on keeping people healthy longer. And that's what our research tries to do. We're not just focused on longevity, we're focused on healthy longevity, which is how long we can keep people functional and disease free in life.
hmm So, how do you envision the future of aging, both like around the world and in Asia or Singapore specifically?
Well, I think that the field is interesting. I've been doing research in the longevity field for 3 decades now almost. And the fascinating thing about it is that we now have strategies to slow aging. I like to tell people, if you're a mouse, we've got you covered. We know how to make mice live 30, 40% longer. We know how to keep mice healthy longer. What we need to know is whether those strategies that work in mice also work in humans or not. And I think uh, that's really the focus of a lot of studies right now, is to try to determine whether that actually is going to work in humans. Sorry, there's a storm blowing in and it's blowing the computer, so I'm trying to hold it steady.
Yeah, no
But
worries.
but but we need to do the clinical studies in humans to validate whether we're really reversing aspects of aging.
So, what role is NUS playing in Singapore to help healthy longevity in its civilian populations?
Well, I think we have multiple roles here at the university. Of course, we're doing the research both in the animal models and in humans, but also we're trying to facilitate education of the population. We know that lifestyle modification can, on average, make people healthy much longer, and that includes exercise, stress management, sleep control, and diet. And if people understand that and they really invest in their own health by changing their lifestyle, they can already have a big impact. And we're trying to get that word out.
Mhm. Bless
Excuse
you.
me.
Yeah. So, I know that you worked in China briefly from like 2009 to 2014. I'm really interested in China because my cultural background is Chinese, and I'm very curious about what the aging biology community is like there. So, would you like to talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, I think that we were doing aging research in China starting about, like you said, 2008. It wasn't very popular then, but what's happened is that China has also recognized that aging is a major concern for their population, because they have the fastest rate of demographic change anywhere on Earth. So they don't have the oldest population, but it's rapidly getting old because of, first of all, positive changes in healthcare, and second of all, one child policy, which restricted the number of children over a couple decades. So they're really concerned about aging as well, and they're putting a lot of money into research on aging. In fact, I have 3 trips there in the next 2 months to go visit and work with my collaborators there and go to conferences. So I think this is another country that's really investing, and actually all countries should be investing because by 2050, there's going to be over 2 billion people over the age of 65. Everybody thinks about COVID, but it's actually aging that's the biggest medical issue of this century. And even with COVID, the biggest risk factor for mortality due to COVID-19 was being over the age of 65. So it's really another way of looking at the aging problem.
Wait, that's so cool. I also didn't know that you were going to have recent trips to China. Just out of curiosity, like where are the aging hubs in China? Like which universities are your collaborators from? Like what are they up to?
Yeah, it's pretty distributed. There's research at everywhere from Beijing and Shanghai at the major universities, but also in Hangzhou and um, Shenzhen down in the south. And so I don't know that it's extremely concentrated, but I think there's researchers at every major university, or many of them now, working on the biology of aging. And there's also clinics that are beginning to try to adopt healthy longevity procedures to help the population already. So I'm excited to see how things have changed. I haven't been back since the pandemic and all of the political issues, but I think that it there's really a sense of collaboration developing again in China, and I'm hoping that as scientists we can work together because the aging issue is a global issue and it needs global solutions.
Well, it's fascinating. Would love to hear all about that trip when you get back. So
Sure.
you've also been in the aging field for a very, very long time. So
Yeah, I know. You're telling me I'm old. That's what you're telling
no, I'm saying that you're wise, very, very wise, young looking,
me.
but
Oh, okay. Okay. Good.
so how have you personally witnessed the field changing throughout the years?
Well, it was almost not clinical at all when I started in 1990. Everything was in simple animal models, maybe a few things in mice, rats, and I don't think there was any consensus that it would be possible to develop interventions to slow aging. I think many people thought aging was such a complex process that it would just not be modifiable. But we know that's not true. And we know things like exercise modify aging, but we also have many small molecules, drugs, and supplements now that have dramatic effects on the aging process. And surprisingly, I think looking back, it's rather easy to modify aging, at least in the animal models. I don't see any reason why that won't be true in humans, but in many cases, we don't have the data yet. But I think that it may be easier to slow aging than it is to treat the diseases of aging, like Alzheimer's. And at least that's the hypothesis I have right now.
Wow, it's like it seems like the field has definitely shifted and that it will shift some more. So I feel very lucky to be able to join the
It's
field at this
Yeah,
time.
that's great. It's really kind of the Wild West right now. There are companies starting all over the place working on diagnostics and interventions for longevity, and also clinics and investors interested in longevity. So it's quite a interesting time in the private sector side. And interestingly, you mentioned ovarian aging. I think that ovarian aging is becoming popular too in terms of starting companies. The idea being, is it possible to extend the time that women can choose to have children and give them more freedom as as young adults, to choose between their career and their family. So I think that that's an exciting field that's growing too. And ovarian ovaries are one of the first organs in the body to really age rapidly. And of course, menopause drives a number of aging pathologies downstream after women get menopause. So we're really interested in understanding why ovaries stage and what the consequences of that are.
Yeah, like I'm really excited whether it's like the cutting edge research or like the startups. Like I'm yeah, like I'm so excited for that. And I have a little bit of a fun question for you. So if you have extra healthy years in your life, what would you do with them?
Professors, they just die working in their office. So it's uh, but I hope maybe I won't do that. I think that the most important thing is to enjoy what you're doing, and feel challenged and and motivated and driven. I think that one of the things that people have a problem with is when they retire, if they don't find new ways to achieve purpose in life, then they age more quickly. So, right now I'm still happy working, and I'll probably do that for as long as I stay happy with it. After that, I'll find something else fun to do.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like your true passion. If like even if you had like extra healthy years, you'd still be doing the exact same thing. And I have one last question for you.
I will say one thing though. I don't like knowing what I'm going to do in the long term, and I think that mystery is important to me. I don't want to plan my whole life out. So, don't hold me to what I just said.
Yeah, well, I'm like, we'll see. We'll see. I have one last question for you. And the question is, how do I gain a more global perspective on aging, especially as an undergrad?
Yeah, I think it's a bit challenging to do that because the research is happening in laboratories, and we all collaborate with each other as much as possible around the world. And I think so similar experiments are going on in different places, but people are aging differently in different parts of the world. And so from an epidemiological standpoint, it's interesting to visit different parts of the world to meet people that are older, to understand their mindset and what they're doing. I think there's a Blue Zones show on Netflix right now with Dan Buettner, and he's going to be on our Healthy Longevity webinar very soon. So in US here. So, you know, those kinds of opportunities to really travel and meet people are something that I cherish, and it helps me learn about what's happening with human aging around the world. I think that, if you can't, I travel constantly, and so I have the privilege of being able to do that. It's a little bit harder sometimes as an undergrad, but I think, in looking at how people age in different places is very informative.
Yeah, like personally, I would love to come to Singapore over the summer. As a time fellowship, as a time fellow, I may or may not get like an $8,000 grant. So hopefully that process goes through. Fingers crossed. Once again,
Well, we'd love for you to come, but it costs a lot in Singapore. I've ordered you in advance, so
okay, well,
it's not cheap.
maybe it'll be budgeting time for me, but yeah, just being respectful of your time. Yeah, like thank you again for joining.